Have you ever looked into the eyes of someone you once admired, someone you believed was kind, honest, and full of light, and seen a stranger staring back? Not just a changed person, but someone whose very soul seems to contradict everything they once stood for. If you haven't, chances are you will. And when that moment comes, it will haunt you. Because it forces a question we're terrified to ask. How do good people turn into monsters? This isn't a distant philosophical puzzle. It's real. It's urgent. And it might already be happening to someone you know. Or worse, to you. Now, before you click away, let me tell you something that might change your entire view of morality. The transformation from good to evil is almost never dramatic. It's not a cinematic plunge into darkness. It's subtle, almost invisible. It's the 1,000 tiny compromises we make, in the rationalizations, the lies we tell ourselves, the moments we look away. That's how it begins. And I'm not just talking as a philosopher. I've built empires, I've helped people. I've seen the best in humanity, but I've also seen what happens when power, fear, and ego collide. And I'll be honest, I've felt the pull too. We all have. That's why we need to go deep today. Peel back the illusions. Because the truth is hard, but necessary. Let's start with something simple but terrifying. No one becomes a monster thinking they're the villain. People don't wake up and decide to become cruel. They believe they're right. They believe they're justified. They believe they're doing what's necessary. That's what makes it so dangerous. Evil doesn't wear horns, it wears a mask of virtue.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
And that mask is convincing. So here's the first hard truth. Being good is not a permanent state. It's not a personality trait. It's a daily discipline. You might think you're a good person because you're kind, honest, or empathetic. But those qualities can decay. They're fragile. They require constant maintenance. Like a garden, you have to weed daily, or else the poison creeps in. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you questioned your own righteousness? Most of us don't, because it's uncomfortable. Because we want to believe we're the hero of our own story. But history tells a different tale. Some of the worst atrocities in human history were committed by people who thought they were doing the right thing. People who once loved, once cared, once believed in justice. How does that happen? It starts with fear. Fear is the gateway drug to dehumanization. It's the emotion that makes us see others as threats. And once someone becomes a threat, we stop seeing them as fully human. That's when anything becomes justifiable. Next comes justification. We tell ourselves we're doing what we must. That we're protecting ourselves, our families, our beliefs. And here's the kicker. The smarter you are, the more convincing your justifications become. Intelligence doesn't protect you from moral corruption. In fact, it can accelerate it, because now you can rationalize anything. Then comes groupthink. We surround ourselves with people who echo our beliefs, who reinforce our righteousness. And suddenly, our worst impulses are no longer shameful, they're celebrated. We don't just fall. We're cheered on as we fall. And finally, the scariest part, we forget who we were. Memory is malleable. We rewrite our pasts to fit our present beliefs. We look back and say, I always felt this way, even when we didn't. That's how the monster consumes the person we once were. But here's the twist you didn't expect. The monster is not something we become. It's something we all carry. It's not out there. It's in here. In you. In me. In all of us. And the question isn't whether the monster is real. The question is, who's in control? Let that sink in for a second. Have you ever done something cruel and felt justified? That's the monster whispering in your ear. And if you don't recognize that voice, if you think it's just you being reasonable, then you're already in danger. But don't panic. Awareness is the first step toward freedom. That's why we're having this conversation. Because the only way to stop good people from turning into monsters is to understand the process, to see it clearly, to name it. Let's talk about virtue for a second. We all like to think we're virtuous. But philosophy teaches us that virtue isn't a fixed trait, it's a habit. Aristotle called it ethos, a way of being that must be practiced. You can't be good. You have to do good, repeatedly, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. Because the moment you stop practicing virtue, you start practicing vice. Not because you want to, but because the default setting of the human mind is self-preservation. And self-preservation, unchecked by virtue, leads to selfishness. That's the first crack in the moral foundation. Let's go even deeper. What if the path to becoming a monster is paved with good intentions? Think about that. You want to protect your family. You want justice. You want safety. But if you pursue those values without wisdom, without empathy, without humility, you can justify anything. Torture, lies, oppression, war, and you'll still believe you're the good guy. That's why Socrates warned us that the unexamined life is not worth living. Because if you don't examine your own beliefs, your own biases, your own power, you will become dangerous. Not because you're evil, but because you're blind. Let me ask you another question. When was the last time you admitted you were wrong about something important? If the answer is I don't know or it's been a while, that's a red flag. Because the inability to admit fault is one of the first signs that the monster is waking up inside you. Monsters don't say sorry, they double down. So what's the solution? It starts with radical self-awareness. Not the kind that just says, I know who I am, but the kind that says, I might be wrong. I might be dangerous. I need to keep myself in check. And that kind of humility is rare, but it's powerful. It's what keeps the monster at bay. And then comes accountability. You need people in your life who can call you out, who can say, hey, you're going too far. And you need to listen, because the moment you stop listening to criticism is the moment you start falling. But most importantly, you need to remember who you are. Not the image, not the title, not the reputation, but the values you chose when no one was watching. The ones that made you feel alive. The ones that made you proud. Because every time you compromise those values, every time you tell yourself it's just this once, the monster smiles. Let me leave you with this question. If you became the villain in someone's story, would you even notice? That's the horror of it. Most people don't. They think they're still the hero. They think they're saving the world, but they're not. And maybe neither are we. Let's begin with a hard truth. You are not who you think you are. That voice in your head, the one that narrates your life, the one that says, I would never do that, the one that insists I'm one of the good ones, that voice is not you. It's a mask. A self-portrait painted with selective memory and wishful thinking. You are not the person you believe yourself to be. You are the person your actions create. And here's where it gets terrifying. Most people don't truly know what they're capable of until they're given the right or wrong circumstances. That's when the mask slips. You've probably heard this before: power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. But corruption isn't just about politics or money. It's about identity. The more power you have, the easier it is to bend reality to your will, to redefine what's right, to make your desires seem like justice. And when you do that, you stop looking in the mirror. Or worse, you look and only see what you want to see: a hero, a martyr, a savior. That's when the monster wins. Not with fangs and fire, but with a smile and a flag. Let me ask you a question that might unsettle you. If you were born in a different time, in a different system, with different beliefs, would you have been the villain? Would you have stood up for justice in Nazi Germany? Or would you have followed orders, convinced you were doing the right thing? Would you have spoken out against slavery 200 years ago? Or would you have rationalized it like most people did? Most of us want to believe we'd be the exception. But statistically, historically, psychologically, we wouldn't. The monster doesn't need you to be evil. It just needs you to conform. One of the most chilling psychological experiments ever conducted was the Milgram experiment, where ordinary people were told to administer electric shocks to others as part of a learning study. Most participants did it even when the person they were shocking screamed in pain. Why? Because an authority figure told them to. They weren't sadists. They weren't monsters. They were people. People like you. People like me. That's the lesson here. Monsters are not rare. They're just people who stopped asking questions. And the moment you stop questioning your own beliefs, your own behavior, your own capacity for harm, that's the moment the monster finds its foothold. Now, let's go deeper. There's something called moral disengagement, a term coined by psychologist Albert Bandura. It's the process by which we convince ourselves that ethical standards don't apply to us in a given context. It's how we justify cruelty. We do this in 4 ways. Moral justification, it's for the greater good. Euphemistic labeling, collateral damage instead of innocent lives lost. Dehumanization, they're animals, they deserve it. They're not like us. Displacement of responsibility. I was just doing my job. Sound familiar? These are the tools the monster uses to shape our thoughts. And they're not just used by tyrants or dictators. They're used by us. Every day. Think about the last time you gossiped about someone, or dismissed someone's pain, or looked away from injustice because it was inconvenient. That wasn't evil, but it wasn't innocent either. The road to monstrosity is paved with tiny moral compromises. And we rarely notice we're on that road until we're too far down to turn back. Let me tell you a story. There was once a man who believed deeply in justice. He fought for the oppressed. He risked his life to save others. But as he gained influence, as people began to praise him, something changed. He started to believe that his mission was more important than the rules, and that he was above the law, that the ends justified the means. He began to silence critics. He justified violence. He became exactly the kind of tyrant he once fought against. His name? It doesn't matter, because it could be anyone. It could be you. It could be me. That's the terrifying lesson of philosophy. Your virtues can become your vices if you stop questioning them. Courage becomes recklessness. Justice becomes vengeance. Passion becomes obsession. So how do we protect ourselves? First, we need to embrace radical humility. Recognize that you are not immune, that you are capable of great good and great harm, that you are not the exception to history. You are part of it. Second, we need to cultivate discomfort. That means surrounding yourself with people who challenge you, reading ideas that make you uncomfortable, listening to those you disagree with not to defeat them, but to understand them. Because the moment you stop being challenged is the moment you stop growing. Third, we need to practice ethical vigilance. That means watching ourselves, not just our actions, but our motivations. Why are you helping someone? Is it for them or for your ego? Why are you angry? Is it righteous outrage or wounded pride? Because the monster doesn't feed on evil. It feeds on unchecked emotion. And finally, we need to redefine strength. Strength isn't domination. It's restraint. It's choosing not to abuse your power, even when you can. It's choosing empathy over revenge, forgiveness over punishment. Let me ask you something. What would it take for you to betray your own values? A threat to your family? A chance at power? A moment of humiliation? If you don't know the answer, you're vulnerable. Because the monster already knows. It's watching, waiting, learning. But here's the hope. If the monster lives in all of us, then so does the guardian, the keeper of values, the one who says, "Not today, not this time." And that guardian isn't born from comfort. It's forged in fire through hard choices, painful truths, and constant self-examination. Because being good isn't about being nice. It's about being brave enough to see yourself clearly. Let me leave you with one final question for this part. When you look in the mirror, do you see the person you are? Or the person you've convinced yourself you are? Because until you answer that, you won't know who's really staring back. If you've made it this far, you're not here by accident. You've seen the signs. You've felt the tension. Maybe in someone else. Maybe in yourself. And that quiet voice, the one that whispers when everything else is silent, is asking, is it too late? Can we stop the transformation? Can we pull ourselves or someone we care about back from the edge? The answer is yes, but not without cost, not without pain, and not without facing the most brutal truth of all. The monster doesn't die. It sleeps. You can't erase it. You can't expel it. You can only learn to live with it, to contain it, to become stronger not by pretending it's not there, but by acknowledging it with clear eyes and unflinching honesty. Because that's what real goodness is. Not perfection. Not virtue signaling. Not moral superiority. It's restraint. It's responsibility. It's the daily choice to do what's right when no one is watching and when everything inside you screams to do otherwise. Let's go to the edge of the abyss together. Imagine someone has wronged you deeply, betrayed you, hurt you, lied to you. You're in pain. You want justice, maybe even revenge. You start justifying things. They deserve it. I'm just giving them a taste of their own medicine. I'm protecting myself. And in that moment, something ancient stirs within you. Not evil, but instinct. The primal urge to strike back. Now pause. Here is the final threshold. What you do next determines which part of you will grow stronger. If you indulge the impulse without reflection, without empathy, without limits, you step forward. The monster takes the wheel. And the worst part, it feels good. It feels powerful. It feels like freedom. But it's not. It's the beginning of your imprisonment. Because the monster always takes more than it gives. It demands loyalty, silence, secrecy. It isolates you. It rewrites your story. And before long, you're not the person who was hurt. You're the person who hurts others. But there's another path. The path of moral courage. It's slower. It's quieter. It doesn't come with applause or glory. But it's real. It's the decision to stay human when everything else wants you to dehumanize. It's to stay soft when it's easier to be hard. It's to choose forgiveness, not because the other person deserves it, but because you deserve peace. Let me challenge you with this. Who do you become when no one is watching, and you know you can get away with it? That's the real test of character. Not how you behave when you're praised, but how you act when you're alone with power and pain. So how do we stop the monster? Let's break it down logically, practically, and profoundly. Step 1. Acknowledge the shadow. Carl Jung, the great psychoanalyst, said that the first step to wholeness is integrating your shadow, the dark, unconscious parts of your personality. Denying them gives them more power. But naming them? That's how you take control. Ask yourself, what are my triggers? What makes me cruel, manipulative, jealous, or resentful? Don't hide from it. Write it down. Own it. Because the parts of yourself you refuse to confront will control you from the shadows. Step 2. Cultivate inner boundaries. Most people think morality is about external rules. But true morality is internal. It's the ability to say to yourself, even if I could, I won't. That's strength. Not because someone's watching. Not because you're afraid of consequences. But because you've made a vow to yourself, I will not become what I hate. Practice saying no to yourself. It's one of the most powerful skills you can develop. Step 3. Seek radical accountability. We all need someone who isn't afraid to tell us the truth, who won't be seduced by our charisma, our success, or our justifications. Find that person. Or become that person for someone else. And when they call you out, don't defend. Don't explain. Just listen. Reflect. That moment of humility might save your soul. Step 4. Stay connected to suffering. The monster thrives in detachment. When we stop seeing others as real, as complex, as sacred, we lose our humanity. So make it a practice to stay connected. Volunteer. Listen. Read stories from those who suffer differently than you. Watch your own heart soften and your judgments shrink. Empathy is the monster's kryptonite. Step 5. Revisit your values daily. Write them down. Read them. Live them. Not just when it's easy, but especially when it's hard. Because your values are your compass, and the darker the forest, the more you'll need them. Let me ask you a final question. If someone recorded your life without sound, and all they could see was your behavior, would they say you're the hero? Or the monster? No excuses, no explanations, just what you did. Can you live with that answer? Because that's the real legacy you leave behind. Not your words, not your intentions, but your impact. The truth is, we're all on the edge, every day. One decision away from becoming something we swore we'd never be. But that's not a reason to despair. It's a reason to wake up, because if the monster is always watching, so are we. And we are not powerless. We can choose again, every moment, every day. We can choose to be the kind of person who sees the monster and says, not today. We can choose the hard path, the honest path, the path of reflection, restraint, and relentless love. And if we do that, if enough of us do that, we can change the course of history. Because monsters don't win by being strong. They win when good people fall asleep. So don't sleep. Stay awake. Stay awake. And remember, you're only ever one choice away. One choice from becoming the monster. Or one choice from saving a life, including your own. Thank you for watching. If this moved you, share it. Not to go viral, but because someone somewhere might be one decision away from the edge. And your voice could be the one that pulls them back. Now ask yourself, who do I choose to become today?